My journey as a philosopher over these last 45, 50 years as a logician and ontologist. Ontology is the science of being, the language of being. And I've been focused upon how do we humans know how to cross profoundly different worldviews, cultures, religions, traditions on a planetary basis. If we're in the Judeo-Christian mind and that ecology of how we make sense of the world, are we able really truly to enter into the Chinese mind, to understand the Tao, to understand Qi, to understand Feng Shui? Can we enter the world of the Hindu, Vedic, yogic reality and understand samsara and karma and dharma, all of these terms from the Sanskrit tradition of Vedantic wisdom? Are we able to enter Buddha's mind, a radical breakthrough on the culture? How do we cross worlds? Is a question I posed to the Academy and to the planet at large. And that's a question that had not been adequately looked at. It's all important. Because we don't realize that we are raised and schooled from day one in utero all the way through to think in the culture that we're in. And we're raised in our families and we're shaping the lens of the mind. And our education system does not really help us to become adequately aware that the lens we have and shaped unconsciously and preconsciously shapes our world, what appears to us in our life, in our what we call experience. Inner and outer experience on the screen of our awareness is shaped by the lens of our mind that we don't even become aware of. And it really becomes problematic when we encounter an other, a different culture, a different person, a different gender, whatever, that sees the world differently. And then there's friction, then there's turbulence, then there's rupture and breakdown, and often violence when worlds collide. And we're not educated to become aware of our lens. Our mamas and papas don't usually say, honey, when you go out in the world, check out your lens. Know that the world that you're facing and shaping is a function of the lens we helped you to grow, but know that there are other lenses, profoundly different lenses. And the education system is going to help you to become aware of that. Sensitivity to one's lens. I call it lensitivity. It's a word that we need to learn, to be sensitive to the lens issue. Because when we try to cross another world, we have to somehow learn the skill, a rational skill, as a human, to step back from our privileged lens, the way we've been seeing it, deeply addicted to our own perspective, to cut some slack and open some space to allow the voice of the other to be heard in her own voice, to hear the other as she speaks, not the way you see them from your lens. That's deep dialogue. How do we do that? Well, that's what the wisdom of the planet is. If we could step back and say, so I'm raised in the European traditions, which is already highly complex, and in the Judeo-Christian mind, or a Christian mind, let's say, how do I really truly open up and learn and listen to voices of others across the planet and in my own culture, because we're allegedly a multicultural society? A culture is a lens. A culture is a worldview. It shapes your reality. What makes sense in one world often does not make sense in another. In one world, for example, you say, well, this is just stones. These are just trees. This is just nature. This is dead stuff. This is just matter. In another culture, you enter the Lakota mind, and they see that nature is wonderful spirit. The river, the mountain, the buffalo. Spirit. Are they just weird and idiosyncratic, or are they seeing the world differently? Is the planet Earth Gaia, or is it dead matter, dead inert stuff? So when we cross worlds and dance across worlds, that's when we open a global lens, a global mind, a deeper lens with more capacity. It's the ultimate technology, actually. The lens of the mind. It's not just the logic that we're using, but the logistic, the mind operating process. And the computer age is helping us. What mind operation, word process are you using? Well, what mind process are you using? And so if you step back, and this is what I'm going to try to do as a meditation, to say, think of what Krishna was teaching Arjuna in the Gita. Think of what Buddha's breakthrough was. Think of Abraham's struggle, and Moses, and Jesus, Muhammad, what they were bringing through. The whole tradition of Sufi, all the way through to the Quakers, and the Kabbalah, the yoga philosophy. What's going on? And what I'd like to suggest is if we could step back and open that global lens in global space, there are astounding disclosures of a consensus and a diagnosis in these minds across the planet for millennia that have been warning that if you are impaled and stuck in an ego-based mind operating process, if you're monocentric, if you're egocentric in the language, the script, the lens, the life you're living, it's going to be inherently polarized, fragmented, discoherent, and broken, and the source of suffering. That's a huge, sensational diagnosis, medically and scientifically. Because when you step back into the global lens and then listen to the global wisdom of the planet, the global enlightenment, you'll see that the consensus in very different voices, but they're all echoing the same basic axiom. That I'm gesturing to the bottom of the page where I'm going to put the ego-based way of thinking, and above it, what the great traditions have all have been calling humanity to. The Tao, the Om, the Shunyata, the Yahweh, the Allah, all of these great traditions. Across the planet, there's something about human consciousness that pulls it to the source of the light. Whatever lights we have in our culture and making sense of the world, that light pulls us to the source. What is the source? Whatever name is used across the planet. If we're not connecting to that source, we're cut off. We're starving. We can't reach full reason. We can't gain wisdom. We can't reach enlightenment. We're living in the cave. That's the call of all our traditions. And what you find when you listen to the Tao, first thing you hear is the Tao that is named in this culture space, the ego-based space, is not the Tao. Om, Brahman, Atman, all the yoga of wisdom, not in the ego box, not in the ego space. Buddha, Shunyata, emptiness, all things co-arising, leave the place of suffering, where we are addicted to the ego, monocentric, objectifying, where we make ourselves into objects and things. We're not objects, we're not things, we're human. We're dialogue beings. We're not monologue, ego-log beings. So human nature, who we are as humans, is at stake. If you're using a mind operating process, it makes you an object in the box. And that's what our technology that dominates the planet has been doing. Rather than the call to a higher integral script, where everything is interconnected. A script that is non-dual, holistic, integral. I-thou. This is I-thou space. This is I-it space. And the great teachers have been saying, do not remain stuck in I-it. We are dehumanized. It generates the kinds of crises that Peter Russell was just referring to. We all know we're facing tremendous crises on this planet, everywhere we turn. Both locally in our lives, people in our own inner lives, we are often fragmented. We're trying to put it together. Mind and body. One and many. Me and you. So many divisions within us. So let me, please, in the spirit of meditation, put a visualization. I'm creating a PowerPoint for us right now. So here we are, and this line is very important because that's a separation line between the unified field, which is holistic. This is where we need to go in our evolutionary journey. Plus, in contrast to the space we're in, where here is the thinker, here's where we are, and this is the screen of our awareness, and this is the object of my experience. My life is being articulated on that screen. And logicians know that when I try to understand and break down my experience, I get subjects and predicates. The object to me. So Socrates is wise. Sun is shining. Pen is black. Haverford is a college. I am American. I am hungry. I am thirsty. I am depressed. Our inner mental states and our outer perceptions are all going on that screen. And that's the linguistic structure we use. The content of our sentences that describe the world. So I say snow is white. That sentence is true if the facts out there in the world. So there's the world out there. Here am I in consciousness. Here is my language and experience. And it pictures the world allegedly. And then we realize we have different cultures and lenses. That's what this marks mean. So I can be a biblical person. In the beginning is spirit. Hear, O Israel. The world, let there be light. The biblical world. That's one worldview. But there can be another one. That is not Genesis, it's the Big Bang. The Big Bang is the story that wins the day. The narrative of science. Or you can have another world Well, I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I'm a Jew. I'm a Muslim. Well, that's one. But that's very different from, so is it Genesis or Big Bang? I'm already feeling the strain. Which is the truth? Because I believe in science. I'm a scientist. I'm a physicist. And I know this worldview is correct. The universe is expanding. The Big Bang is true. That's right. But is it Genesis? Let there be light. Is that not the beginning? Is spirit? Or is it matter? What is the ultimate reality? And I'm a civic American. And I believe in the constitutional ecumenical space of the civic culture. Don't bring your religion into cultural space. Separation of, it appears, some religion and democracy and culture. Open the space for a multicultural. But that's already putting more of a strain on me. And of course, I'm seeing my psychiatrist. And she's trying to tell me that I'm all right. It's a way to put this together because I have normal schizophrenia. Because I have multiple identities, because the ID, the I that is here, and the I that is here, and the I that is here, they're different. Why? Because a world is a system of its own. The biblical world is a system. The scientific discourse is a system. The democratic American constitutional is a system. The psychiatric already, she's not Freudian, she's Jungian. And my therapist is telling me, now you've got to get in touch with your male and female side. You've got an anima and an animus. And if you don't get it together, you're not going to be an individual. And I'm now saying, I've got a female in me now to deal with, oy vey, and I'm going crazy. I thought it was going to help me. It's getting worse, okay? So I have a friend who does yoga, so I'm chanting Om. And I'm trying to put my life together and stop the stress in my inner life, right? And my yoga friend has a tree-hugging friend who does Feng Shui. So I know if I move my furniture around that the chi energy will flow. What a mess. This is, welcome to humanity. I'm giving you an example. That's not integral. It takes something very special to bring our normal worlds apart. This is just within one psyche. How about crossing cultures and all of the tremendous violence and breakdowns and wars? Holocaust, genocides, ethnic cleansing. What's going on? The clash of worlds. Why? Because there's an ultimate fight and war for reality. This is where we say what is true, what makes sense, what is the right worldview. And this is no nonsense. The clash of worlds is deep. And how well are we educated to know how do you decode when you're in the biblical world or the world of Christ? Can you cross into the world of science and really understand science? This is something that both our great speakers will be elaborating today. Where is science? Is it here, or is there a deeper place for science? Which is the theme I'm opening up. But when you see this picture and you realize we are not educated in how to dialogue across our worlds. We don't even have the literacy to recognize, okay, when you're entering the Hindu world of Om and yoga, it's not the same as the language I have. It's a totally different grammar. To understand karma, dharma, samsara, yoga, prana, and all of that. The first axiom of yoga, believe it or not, is yoga is the quieting of the ego mind. First axiom. The Om space. When Krishna in the Gita, Krishna is the voice of Om. Speaking to Arjuna, the broken down warrior, his life implodes in a midlife crisis on the battlefield. His worldview collapses. And he realized, I can't kill my own family. I'm a great war hero, but I can't kill my own family. Something's wrong. Right? So that all of you stand back from any one view, and if you can step back into a global lens and open up a bit and check out what our great teachers are saying, and wonder why is it that all of our great wisdom traditions are saying there is something primal and first. It's Yahweh. In the beginning is Yahweh. It is Om. It is Tao. It is emptiness, Shunyata, the Buddha's name for the field. It is Allah. It is primal energy, even in the language of science, the unified field. They're all across the planet realizing there is a primal first. And it's the no-brainer. It must be infinite. If you think about it for a moment, you can't think about it here anymore. Because this puts it in the box and that's finite. But to cross into this field, which is a space of reality, the field of reality, and all of our geniuses knew that the field, whatever name you call it, Om, Tao, Allah, Shunyata, it is Christ, it is an infinite field. What does that mean? You can't put it down here in the box. You got to cross and meet the field and enter into the flow of the field. Athletes call it being in the zone. When you're jazzing and you have those high creative peak moments, you break out of this box and you enter into the field where everything is interconnected and flowing. So in the Hindu Vedic wisdom of yoga science, and this is science, it understands that the field of Om, the infinite Om, is an infinite symbol. When you get into the Greek wisdom, it's logos. Logos Sophia. My field is philosophia, lover of philosophy. Sophia is wisdom. And logos is the infinite light that lights up the mind. It is speech, it is language, it is reason. That's the word logos. It's huge. That's why the science words, philology, the logic word comes from logos. That's an infinite word. That's when John borrows it in the biblical tradition from Yahweh. In the beginning is a logos, and the logos was God. And the logos became flesh. All of that talk is the logos talk. So Greek wisdom, philosophy is born with the attempt to reach the logos, the light of the mind, the light of reason. And the question is, as Socrates and Plato saw, that humans are living in the cave. They're attached to the objects of the senses, the objects of their more limited mind. And the journey of philosophy is to break free and go into the light, break the chains that hold you there, looking at the shadows on the wall, to go into the rational light, and that's where wisdom flows, and that's when you'll get justice in Plato's Republic. That's when you become a full human. Being a rational being is to become a being who's in the logos. And that's what dialogue is. It's dialogos. Dialogue doesn't mean two. It means through. To enter into the logos. That's where all of our worlds meet. All of the diverse possible stories that we have, they're all coming out of the logosphere. So there's the egosphere, broken into many different stories and perspectives and worlds that don't know how to communicate because they're not in the common ground of the logos. So dialogos, deep dialogue. Could it be that this is not where we are at our highest and best in the ego space, ego sapiens, but in the logos space as logos sapiens? Who are we? Our great wisdom teachers are saying this is where we are. This is where we belong. Where is this space? So the Om language in the Hindu wisdom and science is attempting to educate Arjuna, the stand-in ego person, in the script that will take him, her, into the space of the Om, into the unified field, the Gandhi space. This is where Gandhi, the Mahatma, Atma, is the self, the awakened self. Not the ego, jiva, the separated self, but the awakened self, the yogi self, is the one that can surf the unified field and stand in that Atma. And that's where you find your power of one. That's the power, the satya, truth force, that Gandhi was touching, for example. Just to use an example of someone who brought it into the world, how can you tap this and bring it into the politics? And when Martin Luther King learned from Gandhi and others, the satya, the non-violence, the passive resistance, the civil disobedience, is how to tap that power for civil rights to shift in the place where our cultures are more impaled and broken. So this has been a long story, and all the way through with the Yahweh. And some of you have heard me say this before, and I'm trying to just quickly get us all on the same page so I can really come to the main points I'd like to for this occasion of our dialogue today, which is, could it be that there's a deeper way to do science? Could it be that scientific method, as beautiful as it is, as wonderful as it has productivity and technology and all of these great blessings, that there can be a deeper advance of scientific method? What is our great shift that we're talking about? Is this where the shift takes place, or is the shift moving from here into the space of awakened global consciousness and culture? I'm suggesting our wisdom teachers across the planet have all for centuries been calling humanity to shift from being dominated by this level of technology of mind, where we objectify, and everything here is an it. I hope you see that, because when you separate the mind, the conscious thinker, from the objects of thought, even if we process ourselves here, We make ourselves objects of thought. So I am a man, I'm a teacher, I'm a philosopher, I'm an American, and I have all of these pieces of information that adds up to me. And I'm an object, I'm a being, I'm an entity. And we think that's maybe good, but it's not. Buddha's great awakening was to say that this is to suffer. When you play this game and you buy into naive identity that splits you from the field and separates you, this is getting awfully messy. I will change this slide in a moment and start over. But Buddha saw that when you're addicted to this mental operation system, and it's an addiction of the mind, we suffer. When Buddha awakened, he came through with 4 simple axioms to present it in a user-friendly way for the masses, for the people. Existence is suffering. It has a cause. Attachment to this way of thinking and using our minds, ego-based, egocentric, ego-mental, objectifying, reductive, cut off from flow. We have a choice, was the 3rd axiom. We don't have to use our minds this way. We could use it in the Buddha way, mindful, heads up, entering presence of mind, living in the moment. The Buddha field, which is what? Where everything, in the infinite field, the Buddha field is the field of reality. Everything is interconnected. Everything is flowing. Nothing can be separated in the way we separate ourselves from everything else. This is a huge tragedy for Buddha, for the human suffering. And he saw himself as a scientist, diagnosing the ontological sickness of being separated from integrity and wholeness and flow. And he said, I'm not here to do academic philosophy and metaphysician. I'm not here to do metaphysics. Buddha said, I'm here as a physician to remove the arrow of suffering, which is what? It's this mentality, the mental operating process that produces our world of fragmentation and division and separation that cannot be flourishing. So how do we find healing and wholeness medically, ontologically? Is to recognize the disorder, which is a consensus of across the planet, our great teachers, and to move somehow into a place of healing and wholeness where we're flowing with a higher integral mental calculus. So the Buddha mind, the 8-fold path of rehabilitating the mind to be in the flow of reality, to be in the zone, and to live there and sustain it. That's the Buddha way, that's the Buddha prescription. But that's what Krishna is teaching Arjuna in the yoga philosophy. So back to the Yahweh call, when Yahweh is calling out to the planet, hear, O Israel, Lord thy God is one. Love me with all you got. What does that mean? Well, as with Arjuna, Abraham had Isaac, he had his agenda, he had his world, and the higher voice was saying, put me first, please, honor me. Which means what? You can't privilege your story, your identity, your attachments, your son. You got to let it go. Yourself, you've got to let it go. All the great teachers say, when you honor what is first appropriately, you have to reorient your life to not put your agenda, your story, your predication box above the truth. You've got to go through an inversion to honor what is first. So in that respect, in this global story, Abraham is heroic for humanity in saying, I'm going to have to let go of the dearest to me, my son. I must sacrifice it. Having done that very mental act, that was the sacrifice, because he was honoring Yahweh's call. And when Jesus comes on the scene and seeing where are we in our honoring of what is first, he felt the need to shift the lens, shift the language. This is a huge point. I'm trying to give a sense that if you listen to the great teachers, all saying, don't be stuck in this separated box where you're an object written in stone. Live it in your heart. Cross this line. Go into the Christ space. When you are one with the Word. That's a huge point. The consensus is this crossing is enormous. That's our evolutionary crossing, where you write the word out there on the screen, on the paper, in the speech, in the box, or step into the space in which you are one with the flow of the word. This is the word. This is the script. When Descartes saw he could doubt everything in the box radically, and he got scared, and he dropped his story, and then he said, I am, in his meditations. He was saying, I am in this field. He was stripped of all names and images and information, and yet he was. He reached his deeper self in the field of meditative awareness, and he didn't know his way. He didn't have a culture to back him up. As in the yoga tradition, you had centuries of attempting to understand the meditative technology, and Buddha's centuries of understanding meditative mind. We need a culture to understand and civilize meditative thinking. And that's what Christ was trying to do. When he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he was not speaking in the predicative box. He was touching into the logos. And he was realizing and modeling for us that we are the script. And what happens is enormous at this point, because from going from an I, it, and this becomes the sin zone, the sin cut. And in Eastern philosophy, it's samsara. What is samsara? The place of suffering and repeating cycles ad infinitum, over and over, where you're stuck in this place in the cave where Arjuna was. And the whole point of wisdom is to break that bound and escape velocity into liberation, to become a human. So whether it's East or West, there's a deep diagnosis, there's a deep split that keeps us out of the flow where life flows. And we mature as humans when we enter into that space. So what happens is that instead of an I, it, when you enter into the space, and I use double parentheses, as you know, because I've had to find a way. I'm going to start over. This is off. There might be a design here, and it's unintentional. Yeah. So I'm calling for the next slide, please. And what I'm going to do here is going to be, odd looking, but this is huge. I'm starting out this way now. I'm starting out with, which I didn't have before. I don't know if you understand. We are always in the infinite field already. It's not that we are here and it's over there. No one can ever step outside of the zone, of the Om space, of the Yahweh space, of the Buddha space, of the Christ space. The infinite field. There's no stepping outside of the infinite field. Think about it. You can't push it away. It's infinite. And it's huge. This is huge headline news. It means that right here in this room, right here now, in this pen I'm holding, I can put the pen here or I can do this. In every grain of sand, as Blake saw, I'm using double parentheses. When you cross this line from this script and mental process into this unified field, holistic field, there is a tremendous, fundamental, miraculous change in everything. The lens of the mind shifts, and the I and the other are intertwined in an interconnectivity, not I versus the object, it. This is I, thou. The I-thou life is a dialogue encounter with the other where you don't put your lens on the other, but you stand in an open sacred space allowing the other to show herself, himself. It's a space of love. It's a space of respect. It's a space of honor. It's a space of ethics. This is ethics. All the teachers knew it. They say never treat a person as an object, not yourself or an other. If you objectify unintentionally, you're violating the humanity and sacredness of the other. So Buber saw the I, it, and the I, thou. But we never marked it out. And I saw on my journey, we had to find a way, this is so huge, not to conflate the two, which is what we do, but to find a way to write it so we could see when we're in the I, thou space. I use double parentheses for that. When you cross this line, and I use single parentheses to mark this mental operation level of language and life. And the diagnosis of our great teachers is that this is suffering, it's pathology, it's dysfunctional, it's breakdown, it's not high science, it's not spirituality, it's not ethics, it's not democracy, it's not human relations. Crossing into the mature space, this is the evolutionary crossing, into I-other, where the other is a sacred other, that you're open to listen. You're being scientific. This is scientific method. Scientific method is great in its early form. It was saying, don't buy one story on authority, experiment and find out. Test it. Use hypothesis. That is a superior epistemology and way of knowing. And it's right. It's beautiful. Rather than taking it by authority. But if your lens is stuck, then you're not doing high science, because science also should say, don't just experiment in the box, but experiment with your lens. Is your lens rich enough? If you want the unified field, Einstein couldn't get the unified field here, because you can't. The script blocks you. So whatever our teachers say in this space, and we download them here, we're blowing it. So that is the science and reason why humanity, despite the teachings of centuries, remain dominated by this space. We download the teachings into this space. And it's really a scandalous point, because this is a human disaster, if you really understood it. Our teachers were saying, when you use a single bracket way of living and chop your world and mental states and yourself and relationships and others and the universe, you're going to get mind bites and pieces and fragments and wars and divorces who objectify our kids. Imagine raising a child in this space and objectifying them. It's a form of child abuse. I hate to say it. It's abusive. It's a kind of violence. It's hermeneutical violence when you lay your lens on the other when the lens is limited this way, rather than living in a space that allows. This is what Montessori and John Steiner, for example, and others and Quakers are trying. How do you open a sacred space for each person to shine in her lights, in her own voice, as a person, not as an object? That's moral space. That's where we're sacred beings. All our teachers are calling us to this. This is the Gandhi space, and so forth. So to sum up this opening meditation, I was trying to give a visualization, because to me it's all important. If you miss this, you miss the main great evolutionary invocation of all our teachers. Upscript, folks. This is the logosphere, where everything is interconnected. Why? Because it's an infinite field. So what? It's infinite unity. So what? It's not finite unity, it's infinite unity. So there's infinite diversity. Indra's net has infinite points, each unique. Each person in this room is absolutely unique, a sacred being. So there's individuality in that space. That's what individual means. Individual is divided. Individual is non-dual, non-divided. Here you are divided, as I try to illustrate, always by the very mental process and script we're using. It splits us. Within and between, across worlds, across religions, across traditions, across ideologies, across democracy can't flourish. There can't be we the people. If democracy is we the people, how do we become a we in the place of dialogue? How? Is there room for diversity? That's where diversity flourishes. You can have honorable diversity and otherness here, and yet in a common ground, in a common people, in a community, rather than in a fight for power plays to win the votes. So in a way, I'm just trying to show the technology of the double bracket space, the literacy of global literacy and intelligence is vital for flourishing of human beings and overcoming the wide range of pathologies in our inner lives, interpersonal lives, intercultural lives, political lives, where we encounter different perspectives and worlds. And so science, now to sum up, the question of integral science and scientific method, I'm suggesting that as great as a scientific method is at this stage, when it has not questioned the logistic operation of the mind, it hits a wall that does not allow it to understand genuinely nature. Nature is here. Nature is an infinite flow of connectivity. Nature, the laws of nature and interconnectivity is non-locality. The butterfly effect, we know what that is. It's a holistic space, not a linear, monocentric, egocentric space. This calculus is not adequate to understand nature. And physics is pushing at the edge, and Peter is going to do a beautiful job of helping us to understand that. The shift into a place where we could understand the vastness and depth of nature in a deeper scientific lens. And in this space is where spirituality blossoms. That's the space of global enlightenment. Enlightenment is a dilation of the mind and the heart from an ego-based cave closure to an open, interactive, deep dialogue, awakening in the light of reason. Enlightenment is awakening human reason. And that's been a long journey of becoming a full rational being. So global enlightenment is not something that we consider a luxury we can't afford. It's an absolute necessity that we can't afford to miss or defer. The time has come for us to awaken into the script and literacy of the call of our great wisdom and the highest level of science. And that is really what this reflection and this event is about. So I'm inviting us to think, please, of science. The highest point is check it out, experiment, listen, have an hypothesis, test it, revise it, get the feedback. What is the feedback loop of experimentation in a laboratory? Dialogue. What is dialogue? The pulse of reason. What is reason? The space of logos. What is the literacy of logos? The awakening of rational logical intelligence, which is what? Connect the dots, which is integral thinking. You can't do integral science here. You can't have mind-body medicine here, because mind is one category and body is another. Soul is different from body. They're broken, they're split, and you can't. That's a mind-body problem just alone. So either you're going to handle the medical problem of the ADD by tweaking the brain with drugs, or you see your psychiatrist to check out the mind operating intelligence behind it, to understand it. What's going to be your prescription? Medicine has been split. So how do you get integral medicine, which is a part of my topic? You've got to get into an integral literacy in calculus. What do you find? Well, here, every point is profoundly interconnected. It's mind-body. But it's not just mind-body. Just as Einstein found space-time continuum, you need double brackets for the space because they can't separate them. It's not just space and time or mind and body. So every point here is mind-body. That's a primal energy. But it's mind and word. Mind and word and world. They're all hyphenated in this script. So if you just did an experiment in time, ego time is broken. Single bracket time has passed, that's over. Future, not yet. Present, fleeting. And yet the wisdom of the planet says, be here now. You can't do that here. You've got to rise to a higher time. Double bracket time, what's that? It's a powerful now. Here's now. What does that mean? Every point is connected in the field. Every point is connected in that moment. The entire past. However many billions of years of evolution is happening in this very moment. And whatever is the future, the summertime, the next fall, the next spring, it's all now. So if you have the capacity to enter into now, you're present. So this is the place of presence. That's the missing tense. Not present, but presence. And all of the wisdom of the planet is saying you become a human when you're able to be here now in the moment. Heads up, mindful, welcome to being a human. And this is where we're going to examine the shift of science and integral medicine and integral culture and integral democracy and ethics and rationality. So that's my opening remarks, and I thank you for your patience very much.